A company will need to pay the government a one-time $100,000 fee.
I think the best minds of the world are worth a lot more than $100,000.
The H-1B program is a scandal play. Most of the people here on H-1B visas are really ordinary skilled. They can't start companies and they're underpaid and indentured. You're really distorting the labor market. You're undercutting your own citizens.
What has been the reaction from Indians in the tech sector?
They're pretty anxious and their American dream has been shattered.
Hey, welcome to our brand new podcast, The Dip. If you want money stories that cross borders, you are in the right place. We're going to be connecting the U.S. to the world and the world to the U.S. I'm Kassandra.
And I'm her beautiful assistant, Daniel. And you won't believe how many months it took to get this podcast off the ground. And we're finally here. We're doing it.
We did it.
Yeah. So coming up today, Argentine President Javier Milei's radical economic experiment is faltering. And now the U.S. is weighing a $20 billion lifeline to stop a full-blown crisis that could ripple through global markets.
But of course, you're going to have already heard that President Donald Trump is jacking up the price of H-1B visas to $100,000. So that's the visa that a worker needs if they want to work certain kinds of jobs in the United States. But Daniel, how is that going to work?
So basically, a company will need to pay the government a one-time $100,000 fee per employee that they hire under this visa. And if you have one of those visas already, then don't worry because this doesn't apply to you. But if you were hoping to work in the US under this particular visa scheme, well, this will probably discourage all but the richest companies and those with big backers from hiring from abroad. So let's dig into this now with Ron Hira. He's a Howard University professor who focuses on labor policy and has testified to Congress as an expert on high-skilled immigration. And Sharia Tajbaksh, he's a co-founder of the San Francisco-based startup MetaView. Thank you very much for joining us both. Sharia, I'd like to start with you first. Thanks for taking the time for us today. I know you're very busy. You're in Florence today, speaking to investors and this kind of thing. I think that's fantastic. Globe-trotting. You're clearly a very busy guy. You run a startup that seeks to give companies an AI boost to their recruiting processes. But what did you think when you first heard the news of this $100,000 fee?
I first heard the news at 5:32 a.m. when I woke up and had an email from the lawyers in my inbox. My first thought was, we have a small number of people that are on our H-1B, and how can we make sure they feel good about it and they continue to feel, safe? At the time, it was not clear that if you already have an H-1B, this does not apply to you. But my immediate thought was, where do we pay? What is the link? Where do we go to pay? Because obviously the members of our team are the most valuable asset to our company. The success or failure of any organization is a function of those people. And so that's what I thought. I messaged some of the folks and saying, don't worry about it. We'll just have to cough up $100,000. And of course, there was more clarity over the days, but that doesn't really change our stance. In the future, we will continue sponsoring H-1Bs, and again, $100,000 is a rounding error relative to the value that our co-workers will create for us in the future. So,
Sharia, you said that the first thing you asked was, where do we pay? But I know one of the other things that you did, maybe the second thing, was write a LinkedIn post about it. And I don't want to stereotype you as a typical startup founder, but tell us, what did that message say?
the message was about the fact that I do consider this to be a rounding error, and I'm not one to write lots of LinkedIn posts, but what I saw was on LinkedIn many other founders jumping on a bit of a bandwagon of saying, look at the US, it now has this barrier for hiring talent. Why did you come work in our other country that we have our company? And I personally found that distasteful. I think the best minds of the world that want to go to the US, the epicenter of AI, to do great work, are worth a lot more than $100,000. And I actually just got my LinkedIn post was I got annoyed about the fact that people are using this as an opportunity to say, well, come to our country. And so I thought I better express what seemed to be a contrarian opinion, which is, no, we're in San Francisco. We also have an office in London, by the way. So, I could have done that, but we are in San Francisco. We are hiring exceptional people. We need the exceptional people to build the future. And if America has now decided the best thing for the country is to charge $100,000 for it, then that is the price of world-class talent. And of course, we can talk about it at more depth as well. There are certain instances where this fee won't apply if it relates to national interest, etc., which I think will probably make the whole thing sound a lot more reasonable than people's first reactions.
Okay,
But the LinkedIn post did go viral. And,
yeah, it was
so
covered
we've
all
been very
over the
busy with
internet, I saw. Yeah.
we've
Sharia,
had
I have a question for you,
thousands of
though,
applicants.
about your story. So you are, when it comes to the US, an immigrant there. What's been your journey so far? And you're kind of in the middle of the process, aren't you, at the moment?
Yeah, I'm a double immigrant. I was born and raised in Iran. I moved to the UK about 17 years ago, and now I'm transitioning to the US. And I'm going through a fairly typical process as well, and I'm currently mid-process. It is not through the H-1B process. Mine is a process called the EB-1A, which is for extraordinary talent. But nevertheless, the process started last November, and I've been going through the different approvals, and there's one last step left before it's all done and dusted. But yeah, going through the process like everyone else.
Ron, I want to bring you into this conversation because we've heard a little bit about this case, right? But stepping back, do you think this is a good policy by the Trump administration to maybe rebalance the labor market?
Well, so let's start with the fact that the H-1B program is a guest worker program, and it's scandal plagued. It's very poorly regulated in the U.S. It allows firms to underpay and then also indenture and control those workers. So it's been exploited very widely. The case that was just discussed, the two cases, the new immigrant going through EB-1A and then as a startup founder, as well as hiring and paying the fees. That's not the typical H-1B worker. The typical H-1B worker is working in outsourcing IT staffing in the back office of some bank, earning about 30 or 40% less than the market wages. And so that's probably about 65 to 70% of the program. And that's really what's being targeted in terms of not just the $100,000 fee, but there are a number of other steps that the Trump administration is doing to try to fix the program so that it does skew towards the gentleman's company and the types of talent that we're talking about. Because right now, the selection process is really poor. It's done by random lottery, and that lottery is actually gained by some of these large, mostly offshore outsourcing firms that are trying to transfer work to my cousins in India. Which is great for them, but not so good for America, and certainly contradicts what the purpose of the program is, which is to fill market gaps, skills gaps that are there, and to bring exceptionally talented people. Most of the people here on H-1B work visas are really ordinary skilled. They can't start companies, and they're underpaid and indentured. So there's a lot of good steps. And by the way, this is not a partisan issue. This is not Trump. Senator Durbin, who's the number 2 Democrat in the Senate, has been fighting for reform for decades now, as well as Bernie Sanders, who's probably the most progressive of the Democratic or independent senators in the U.S. He's been fighting also on the same side of this.
Yeah, so Ron, you mentioned the Indian aspect there, and just for our listeners, you'll be able to hear us kind of dig into that more in a few minutes' time. We'll talk about India quite in depth there. But I know that you say it's not a partisan issue. You don't necessarily support just everything that Trump says. Perhaps the implementation here was problematic. I mean, we heard from Sharia that he was looking around seeing, okay, is there something that we're going to have to then pay out for our current employees, rush everyone back? That was a reaction that a lot of companies had. What would have been a better way to implement this? And would you have changed anything about this particular policy itself?
Yeah, so the proclamation has a number of different things. The fee is still not clear. We're almost 8-9 days out from the fee being announced, the proclamation coming out, and nobody really knows how the fee will be implemented. And they had mixed messages. So clearly they weren't on the same page in terms of the message, and they weren't prepared. And part of that, I think, is this fee idea is a new one. It's not one, these ideas don't come from nowhere. Usually they're bounded about by people like me, policy analysts within the policy community, thinking and vetting ideas. It's a variation of something that's been talked about by economists over the years and analysts of doing an auction, so giving it to the highest bidder instead of having equal weighting. A $60,000 a year underpaid IT worker has the same odds as a $400,000 or $500,000 a year AI specialist. That makes no sense, right? And so the idea here was to use a fee. But they're doing a number of other things that I think really make a lot of sense and things that I've been advocating. Raising the wages for H-1Bs so that they're not underpaid, that they're fairly treated, and that they're not undercutting American workers' wages and job opportunities. They're also trying to replace the random lottery with a weighted wage-based system that skews towards higher skills. So there's a lot of good things in there. I know the $100,000 fee is the shiny object everybody's looking at, but we really don't know how that's going to operate and who it'll apply to. There's all kinds of exemptions that they apparently haven't even decided what to do.
Okay, Sharia, why hire foreign workers at all? Why can't you find this top tech talent amongst Americans?
I think there is a global shortage of supply of tech talent across every country, but also the US. And so there simply isn't enough people in any single country to do what needs to get done to make AI progress as fast as it needs to. And so I think that's just the reality of it. There just isn't enough. And to solve that problem, it's a multi-decade problem of like how do you go to the root of the academic system and produce more people that can do that. But that's a country. That's a problem in every country. There simply isn't enough people in America that have are able to have the impact required for that. There also aren't enough people in India or in any individual country. So I think you really got to come together as a big global unit. And naturally, you need a place to settle and put everyone together and induce serendipity. And I think America is the best place for that. But there's just not enough talent.
Ron, the U.S. tech sector has long claimed that H-1B visas are essential for filling shortages. You have said that many of these hires are ordinary. So how do you reconcile your view with the scale of U.S. companies that are actually lobbying to keep the program open?
Well, there is no shortage, and if there were a broad-based shortage, there may be a shortage in very specific types of talent that Sharia is trying to hire. And that the H-1B program should be used, and we should be bringing in talent. We should really try to bring them in as immigrants. Remember, they're coming in as non-immigrants, as guest workers. They're only guests here for a short period of time. And instead, we should be really rethinking our whole immigration system. But there's no requirement in the H-1B program that for firms to demonstrate that there's any shortage. In fact, there's many cases where American workers have been forced to train their H-1B replacements. So you're not bringing in super skilled people. Most of the people coming in are ordinary. And employers are bringing them in because they're cheaper and they're controllable. They control the visa. They hold the visa and the work status of those workers. They're indentured and controllable. So, of course, the industry is going to lobby for this because it's super profitable. Why hire at market rates, hire American workers? Like you can hire someone who's indentured to you at a lower rate. And the government is giving them this subsidy, these profits, extra profits to those companies. They're going to keep going after it just like they go for tax breaks. They're going after cheap labor. But this is not a victimless crime, right? I mean, this is an act where you're really distorting the labor market. You're undercutting your own citizens, American workers' wages and working conditions. There's 6 million STEM workers in the U.S. There's shortages in very narrow areas, small areas. The H-1B program is wide open. It's anybody in any kind of white collar profession. So journalism, accounting, and all kinds of computing areas. Most of the areas in computing are not in shortage. Wages have been flat or declining. That's how we would measure if there was a shortage, like there were shortages of eggs here in the U.S. Prices went up. Wages have not gone up in the tech sector. They have in narrow areas in AI. So we have to be really careful about how we target this. And the H-1B program is not targeted. It's broad-based. Anybody can go for it. And there is really no controls over ensuring that these are actually filling shortages. So the $100,000 fee, the other actions by the Trump administration of raising wages and selecting will move the program closer to its intention of filling shortages. It still doesn't really solve the problem completely, but it's a heck of a lot better than what we've got right now.
Sharia, we're a couple days out from the real epicenter of this this announcement, and I'm wondering, what do you think startups like yours could learn from what's happened here?
I think I guess I'm repeating what I said before, but the success or failure of any organization is a function of its people. We are, just to be clear, we are part of that very small cohort of companies that are working on in an area where there is a shortage in talent. We need highly technical AI talent. It is critical for the future of both humanity, but also the political landscape. And so, if you think about your company today as a premium on the past versus a discount on the future, then you won't value your people. But if you look at your mission and what you're trying to create, and what you're trying to create is a trillion-dollar company that has huge impacts on the world and in changing people's lives, then any amount you pay people is just a small discount on the future. And so I just think everyone within my bubble should focus on hiring the best people and creating the future that they want.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense for MetaView for your startup. But why bring them to the San Francisco office and not the London office, for example?
They are more than welcome to come to any office. The kind of meta point here is that $100,000 is not going to stop us from wanting to work with the best colleagues on the planet. There are clear benefits to San Francisco and the Bay Area as the epicenter of progress as it pertains to AI in particular, but technology in general. That like density of ideas result in serendipity in a way that is hard to describe. It's starting to happen in places like London and other places too, but I don't think the Bay Area is overnight going to lose the magic that it has in producing incredible things. And so people can go wherever they want. We will sponsor them to come to London. We will also sponsor them to go to the US, and we have no problem with the fees.
Ron, you have emphasized weak enforcement in the current system, but isn't a fee just a really blunt instrument that actually doesn't fix enforcement, possibly just pricing some people or some companies out?
Yeah, so you're missing all of the variety of things that the Trump administration is doing. So the Department of Labor has, for the first time, the Secretary of Labor is actually going to investigate fraud and abuse. So there are enforcement actions that are going on. These things have to be done together for it to work. The $100,000 fee essentially is targeted at the employers themselves to call their bluff, because most of them are bluffing, right? They could find American workers if they want. They just want to pay less to the H-1B worker and control them. And so it's calling their bluff. Are these workers really that valuable to you? Well, you should pay for them. And that's what the fee does. But you're missing all of the other things that are critical. And by the way, right now, recent graduates, we're graduating record numbers of engineers and computer scientists at the bachelor's level. Almost all are U.S. citizens and permanent residents. And they're at record levels of unemployment. They can't find jobs. So and the big tech companies are laying off tens of thousands of workers. At the same time, they're simultaneously hiring tens of thousands of H-1B workers. The shortage argument is a red herring. It's just false. If you want to target it, these are the ways to target shortages, is by raising the wages, raising the stakes, so that instead of indiscriminately hiring tens of thousands of H-1Bs, the companies are much more careful in saying, these are really the valuable H-1Bs that we want.
I mean, certainly it's going to be interesting over the next few weeks and months to see how this shakes out and how the labour market changes as a result of it. Ronil Hira of Howard University and Sharia Tajbakhsh of MetaView, thank you very much for joining us on that today.
Thanks both. So Daniel, we've talked about the business side of things, but of course there's the employees that these companies are hiring or hope to hire. And the H-1B visa program has long been almost like a golden ticket for a lot of Indian IT professionals and students, would-be professionals, right? So I'm wondering really what this means, if this is going to translate into new opportunities for some of these.
Yeah, it was a big topic in the interview we just heard, right? Because Indians do make a large amount of these people who are applying for this particular visa. So I thought, who better to ask than our colleague from DW's Delhi Bureau, Adil Bhatt, who's been digging into this story this week. So Adil, thank you very much for taking the time for us today. What has been the reaction from Indians in the tech sector? Who have you spoken to?
Yes, I've been on the streets of Delhi trying to reach out, find people, usually Indian techies. The reaction from the Indian techies is they're pretty shocked about this news. But then the other side, I try to go to one of the most prestigious universities in Delhi. It's known as IITs, Indian Institute of Technology, where most of the brilliant minds, they graduate from there. They do their undergrad in engineering, and these are the people who take H-1B visas and then they go to US. So I happen to go there and meet the students to understand what's the impact of this H-1B visa on them. So I got to know the mix of reactions. There is one section of students who feel like, those who had this American dream, they wanted to go to the US on H-1B visa, they're pretty anxious and their American dream has been shattered. Then you have other section of people, the young students, who think they're not bothered at all. They don't care about H-1 visas anymore because they think that there are enough opportunities in India. We have tech companies, they would like to work in India. And one of the students who he told me he's discouraged to go to United States because of the political violence, what's happening in United States. So you see these kind of reactions that you have one set of people who wanted to go to the United States for masters, pursue MTech, and then get on this H-1B visa to pursue American dream, work there. But then you have a section of people who said, we don't bother at all. There are other places where they would like to go. They want to join, Google companies. They have offices in Singapore, in London, or in Hong Kong. So they're trying to diversify, rather than keeping an eye only for United States. So that's been the reaction. But one of the most depressing thing that I heard from the student, they had friends who are currently on F1 visa, on student visa. They have paid $100,000 dollars for their masters. Now, because of this new increased fee hike on an H-1B visa, their dreams are they're very anxious. They're saying we put so much of money. And the idea was to go to United States, get into these colleges, pursue masters in computer science and work for these big companies. Now they fear they have to come back. And those anxieties you have from these students, their friends are quite anxious about that, those things. That's what they've been telling me on the campuses and other places as well.
And Indians have a lot of role models to look up to in Silicon Valley, don't they? There are many tech leaders who came originally from India to the US and have made a big contribution. And it seems as well that it's not just something that a kid in university, they decide, okay, I'm going to go for the US. It can, for some families, be a dream that starts very, very young.
Definitely, I completely agree. We have these big companies like Alphabet. It's headed by Sundar Pichai. He's an Indian from an IIT. We have Satya Nadella, another who's heading Microsoft. He's from Hyderabad, south of the India, who graduated from an engineering college in South India. So they kind of they are their role models. You go to IITs, they talk about these role models, and they want to pursue the similar kind of path. And they thought the way to going forward is graduate from Indian top engineering colleges, go to the United States, get into these MTech courses in computer science, and then get on H-1B visas. That was their way to pursue the American dream. Now, we see that anxiety kind of creeping up among these students. They feel that their dreams have been snatched, with this new policy. So we see these anxieties, of course, you have families, they have put so much of money. Like, imagine if I'm giving you an example. One of the student was sharing that his friend went on this MS program in computer science in one American university. They took $70,000 loan, and if he doesn't get a job, imagine he has to come back and pay that loan. It might take years to, give it back to banks. So that human aspect is very important to kind of think. It can have a devastating impact on those students who have put their money kind of for these degrees and to pursue these dreams. So that's the kind of huge story in India, that they feel their American dream has been shattered.
And there's a kind of complex business relationship with US businesses in India, because there's a lot of American businesses who shifted large amounts of their back office functions to India. So like Target or Goldman Sachs or Victoria's Secret even, big companies shifting more and more jobs to India. So you could think that actually some of these American companies might say, we won't spend this $100,000, we'll just shift the function to where the talent is in India. So my question I'm getting to here is, do you think that this could end up having a positive effect for Indian businesses? Because they could keep the talent there. These global capability centers that hire a lot of these people could expand, hire some of this talent. Or is it a net negative for India in general?
So that's the optimism here right now. If you hear from experts, entrepreneurs here, some of them are actually celebrating. They're saying that it's a huge loss for the United States and it's a big win for India. One, they will try to retain all the talent, because Indians have been complaining for a long time. They had this massive brain drain. So all these really talented engineers, they leave the country, go to the United States and build these big companies. Now the reaction that we saw these lot of startup founders kind of celebrating this. Trump did a really good job by kind of stopping H-1B visa. They're hoping they would capitalize on this, and they will try to retain these talented engineers from India, and they would like to open more startups, because they believe they will come up with innovative ideas so that they can invest on that. So that's the hope in India right now. And of course, then others, what you also mentioned, they're also believing that, of course, the American companies will shift to India, and there will be a scope that they might hire a lot of people here from India locally. So that's the optimism that you hear from experts, you hear from entrepreneurs. So it's not kind of a very depressing scenario that way. So one side is actually saying it's a good thing or good news for them.
You mentioned some of these really moving stories of people who have invested so much time and money in this education with this one goal in mind of potentially moving to the U.S. But I'm wondering if you can unbraid some of these a little bit more in terms of what alternatives are people looking at besides the U.S. now, and what's attracting them? Because I would imagine that possibly for some Indians that this news is actually just the cherry on top of the sundae when it comes to some of the branding of the United States within India.
Well, after speaking with these group of students who aspire usually to go on H-1B visa, they're not thinking of diversifying. So a group of students told me they would like to go to Canada is their one option. They wanted to go to Germany is another destination where they would like to pursue, And already we have a reaction from a German ambassador here. He's saying we really welcome Indian skilled labor, and they would like to, employ them because they believe that they can give them the right opportunity. So we already have reactions coming from different countries. They're saying these Indian students from these top engineering colleges with extraordinary abilities and talent, they can come and join them. So that's the reaction we hear from the people right now.
All right. Well, Adil, what I wanted to say was thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us about this, and good luck with the rest of your reporting. I know you're putting together a kind of a complex package for the news, so good luck with all of that. And you stayed up a bit late for us today, so thank you very much for that. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So now, Kassandra, I'm going to put you in the hot seat because one of the stories that you've been tracking this week is Argentina.
Right. Yeah. This is a country that I have to say, I knew it had been having a rough go of things economically, but when you get into some of these numbers, it becomes really clear how dire the economic situation is in Argentina right now. And it was a big reason that 2 years ago they elected this outsider TV kind of personality, sound familiar, to the presidency, right? Javier Milei. And one big fan of his is U.S. President Donald Trump.
So Trump has lent his support to Milei and in the past, but also as part of the meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. So why is Trump getting involved with the Argentine economy and Milei?
So what happened just this week was that the U.S. president met with his Argentine counterpart on the sidelines in New York City of the United Nations General Assembly. And really what this is about extending a lifeline to Argentina to help keep their economy afloat. Trump said, we're going to help bail them out. We're going to help them, but I don't think they need a bailout. A little slip of the tongue there from me, because there has been so much help going towards Argentina. And the timing here is really interesting for both, actually, because the Argentine leader is really one of Trump's only allies in South America. President Trump is not making a lot of friends there right now. And support for Milei and his party have, within Argentina domestically, taken a hit recently because of the slumping value of the peso. There's this idea that 2 years on, there's this classic photo of Milei, right, where he's got this chainsaw and that's him cutting bureaucracy and spending, right? But 2 years on, there's this idea that, okay, maybe it's not really working. And this kind of lack of support or weakening of support for Milei is right before a midterm election in October. So the timing here is not so good for the Argentine president.
Yeah, so it looked like he was getting some successes, and then with the peso recently, he's had to change tact a bit, and that's why he's gone to Trump, essentially, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
But what concrete support is the Trump government going to give Argentina?
Yeah, so the details are still being worked out, but it all seems to be orbiting this $20 billion swap line with Argentina's central bank. And the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that the U.S. stands ready to go with what is needed to support that country. And earlier this week, he laid out on X, we're not calling it Twitter anymore, X, this menu of options, right? He said that support could include, but is not limited to, swap lines, direct currency purchases, and the purchases of U.S. dollar-denominated government debt from the Treasury's Exchange Stabilization Fund. I'm going to underline that, Exchange Stabilization Fund, for a moment, because we'll come back to it. And he finished this long, multi-post X post tweet with Argentina will be great again, right? And while this U.S. offering of this kind of support of another country's currency, that is pretty rare, there is precedent for it. And it was via this stabilization fund, this exchange stabilization fund that I mentioned earlier. And that happened under the Clinton administration when the Mexican peso was a little bit weaker. So all of this is connected. But yeah, that's what's happening right now.
I mean, it could be partly because they're in ideological alignment, right? Because I think Trump took inspiration from Milei. And so, in fact, if you look at Elon Musk, blast from the past, when he took over
the former
Doge.
bromance. This is the new bromance.
Exactly, because Elon Musk was saying, well, if Milei can take a chainsaw to public expenditure, then I'm going to do the same. And he tried the same in the US and then bumped into Trump, of course.
Yeah.
But this whole news around Milei, it's also, coming at the time of where the World Bank is pushing forward its $4 billion in these private-public investments that it was putting into Argentina. What signal is that sending that now that World Bank is really pushing these?
Yeah, so this $4 billion pot of money is from a bigger pot of money that the World Bank had already approved, which was valued at $12 billion. And this part that is now being accelerated, that's supposed to help the sectors that need it most, things like mining, energy, tourism. But what jumped out to me when we start to think about support from the outside is just how much debt Argentina is carrying right now, not only from the World Bank, but also from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. The IMF's number one country with credit outstanding is Argentina, and it's not even close. Argentina's got about $42 billion in debt. The next closest country, number 2, is Ukraine, who is, of course, fighting an active war right now, and that's only about $10.5 billion. So what that should tell you is how much debt we're really talking about here. And I spoke to a really interesting economist earlier this week, Alicia Garcia Herrero. She's currently with Natixis, but previously she covered Argentina for the IMF. And what I asked her about all of this is what risk this poses to Argentina, specifically when we're talking about the IMF. And this is what she had to say.
Well, let me revert your question, which is actually very good. What kind of risk does it pose for the IMF? Argentina is the largest, basically, borrower, i.e., its largest client. Yeah, isn't it? It's around, I can't remember whether 24 or 30%. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. It's a huge exposure for the IMF. So I guess the IMF wouldn't mind, to be very frank, that Bessel comes with a little present, because that means that the U.S. itself cannot afford a default by Argentina. That the U.S. is putting money, bailing out an economy that is the largest client of the IMF. So if I were the IMF, I would be cheering. That's something the IMF really needs. So, this explains also, in my humble opinion, why the IMF program was basically quite easy to get for Argentina, even if the targets weren't really there, as I mentioned before, because it's just impossible for the IMF to afford a default by Argentina, given exposure.
And if you want more from my interview with Alicia, you can find a link to that interview in the show notes.
And it was a fantastic interview, by the way, so check it out. Also on YouTube is where you can find the comments section. You know where that is. So underneath this video, if you're watching on YouTube, leave your comments and questions and we'll put them to the experts and our correspondents in our question and answers edition. That's every Tuesday. In our next episode, you'll hear us answering the questions. You'll hear the experts, the correspondents. So just leave them in the comments and we'll put it to them.
So don't forget to check that out on Tuesday as well. Until then, thanks for joining The Dip.
That's The Dip. Bye-bye.